Today at the National Press Club, Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor. In the early stages of the election campaign, Mr Taylor will discuss the Coalition's budget reply, including key policies on energy and cost of living. Angus Taylor with today's National Press Club address.
Hello and welcome to the National Press Club of Australia for today's Westpac address. My name is Tom Connell. I'm the club's president and the chief election analyst at Sky News. Politics, of course, all about keeping commitments. We do appreciate the Shadow Treasurer kept his commitment today to a full house, despite the fact we are now in a campaign, which he didn't know when he agreed to give the address. We'll get, no doubt, a blizzard of numbers from Angus Taylor today, so I thought I'd throw a few of my own in to begin with. To borrow a phrase from the Prime Minister, perhaps Angus Taylor is kicking with the wind today. According to Newspoll, the number of voters who thought the budget was good for the economy in Labor's first budget in May 2023 was 33%. It dropped to 27% for 2024, and for this budget it's 22%. Only 16% think they'll be better off from the budget handed down last week. On the flip side, when voters were asked if Angus Taylor and the Coalition would have handed down a better budget, 38% said yes, 47% said no. He gets his chance today to convince those voters to change their mind about that. He does so in the midst, of course, of this election campaign. The Coalition a genuine chance of winning. It will be fought on the cost of living and how the two different sides will help the Coalition sticking to its guns as well, that wasteful spending needs to be cut. For those of you watching at home, you can join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @PressClubAust. You can use the hashtag NPC as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Angus Taylor.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you to Westpac for sponsoring today's event. To my many colleagues here today, in particular our economic team, Jane, Hume, Luke Howarth, Dean Smith, thank you for all of your hard work over the last 3 years. To Dave Sharma, Ross Cadell, I think there are others. It's great to have you here as well. And I'd also like to acknowledge my ACT colleagues who are here today, who have provided us and provided me support right across this term of the Parliament throughout. This election is about the economy. It's about who Australians trust to restore their living standards, their hope and their aspirations for the future and the future of their families. We need strong economic management to restore Australia's prosperity. Economic management that has been lacking from a distracted government and that did not treat the cost of living crisis with the urgency it deserved. Now, economics is ultimately about people. One of the great privileges of being Shadow Treasurer is travelling across the country and meeting Australians from all walks of life. In the lead up to the budget, I spent the week on the road and meeting some of the outstanding Coalition colleagues who are fighting for better representation for their communities. Our candidates include factory managers, farmers, trade lawyers, investment bankers, small business owners and school principals. Our team reflects the people they seek to represent, both in experience and in ambition. From Burnie in northern Tasmania to Rowville in southeastern Melbourne and Killara in North Sydney, the message I heard was consistent and clear. Australians cannot afford another 3 years of Labor. Across the country, people are being let down by a government with the wrong priorities and no plan to restore prosperity. Too many Australians I meet feel there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Now, the Coalition set 3 tests for this budget, reflecting our priorities if we were in government. The first, to restore our standard of living and to get inflation down sustainably. Second, restore a pathway to prosperity and hope for all Australians, particularly when it comes to small business and owning a home. And third, restore budget discipline and honesty. The budget, again, like previous budgets, failed these tests and in doing so failed Australians. And we just heard that Australians agree that it failed that test. For fatigued Australian families, it was another demonstration of a government preoccupied with its priorities, not the concerns of Australian families. This was a budget for re-election, not for the future of our great nation. We see this in the collapsing living standards and the corrosive impact of long-running inflation in this country. Indeed, living standards have collapsed by 7.9% under Labor, and on Labor's own plans, they won't recover until the end of the decade, a lost decade for hard-working Australians. The collapse is the worst on record and worse than any peer country. On average, prices are 11% higher and still going up, and for working families, living costs have risen by closer to 20%. History tells us that inflation has a nasty habit of resurging. Real wages have fallen over the last 3 years and are not expected to recover to 2020 levels until 2032. At the same time, Australia has experienced the longest per capita recession on record. Families are struggling in ways they have never struggled before. We see a record number of Australians working multiple jobs, digging deep into their savings and cutting back on non-essentials and even essentials in some cases. The conclusion is simple and stark. Australians are poorer under Labor. Food banks are overwhelmed and demand on their services is increasing, not falling. Families with mortgages, 2 incomes and 2 cars are now found queuing at food banks. This is the face of Labor's economy. In Peter Dutton's budget reply, the Coalition committed to deliver $50 million over 4 years for food charities like Food Bank, Second Bite, OzHarvest, to expand their services. This is a necessary investment because we are facing an ongoing crisis. The great Australian dream of seeking to own a home or start a business is fading for many. Inflation, interest rates, rising taxes are making opportunities seem like a foreign concept. Stubborn inflation has seen interest rates go up 12 times and down just once under Labor. Indeed, a typical family with a mortgage has paid out $50,000 they weren't expecting to pay just 3 years ago, turning a dream into a nightmare. Small businesses are closing at record levels with 29,000 insolvencies under Labor, again a record. The real incomes of small business owners have collapsed by over 18% over the same time period. Personal income taxes have increased by 24% under Labor. The average taxpayer paid $3,500 more in tax this year alone, or $7,000 more for a dual income household. Inflation does that. Inflation does that. It raids household budgets to fund the government budget. For a family that is $50,000 worse off and paying thousands more in tax, Labor's 70 cents a day election bribe starting in 15 months' time does nothing to stop the ongoing impost of collapsing incomes and rising costs. Labor's own budget papers reveal the cruel hoax of 70 cents a day, showing that just after a year, tax per person will be higher than when that came into effect. It is an insult to Australians. And the budget, meanwhile, is deteriorating before our eyes. Despite an inflation-fuelled tax windfall, commodity surpluses look as fleeting as rate relief. The budget was silent on restoring budget discipline for the 3 fiscal challenges facing our economy. How we provision for budget repair to take the heat off inflation, prepare for future shocks, provide for essential services and avoid leaving a massive liability to our children and grandchildren. How we provision for the defence of our nation in the most uncertain time since the Second World War, and how we address the impact of rising taxes for businesses and households driven by inflation. These are 3 vital, if competing, challenges that require a strategic, balanced and long-term approach to secure our nation's prosperity. Instead, Labor has delivered an incoherent fiscal strategy that talks about economic responsibility while growing debt, increasing taxes and driving up structural spending. The contrast is clear when you compare today's budget with what Labor inherited. Over the next 4 years, debt will reach $1.2 trillion, almost $125,000 for every household. Taxes will be $532 billion higher, $51,000 higher for every household, and Labor will spend an extra $425 billion. That's $41,000 for every household. This spending splurge comes with a generational cost. Over $170 billion of deficits that can only be paid for with higher inflation, higher taxes, higher debt, or some combination of all three. And indeed, Labor is offering all three. Not only is this situation unprecedented and unparalleled, it's not what Australians experienced under the coalition government. Core inflation has averaged 4.1% under Labor versus 2.2% under the previous coalition government. Interest rates 3.6% versus 1.3% under the coalition government. Underlying electricity prices are 32% higher, gas prices 34% higher. The Treasurer likes to argue that his failures are someone else's fault. But the variable in this equation isn't global factors, it's bad Labor government. A government that spent when homegrown inflationary pressures were high, a government obsessed over the soft landing, ignoring what it meant in terms of a long squeeze for the family budget, a Treasurer whose priority was remaking capitalism rather than restoring living standards. And even as we start this campaign, we've had a Prime Minister spend more time telling lies about Medicare than talking about the cost of living. It's more student politics than good government. Australia needs strong leadership with a steady hand to get back on track and back to basics. We need to prioritise solving problems that matter to Australians and restoring hope and aspiration. This is what Peter Dutton and our team are offering at this election. So last Thursday, Peter outlined our alternative to restore aspiration and hope to those Australians left behind by Labor's cost of living crisis. Today I want to outline our strong economic vision to address these issues. Our plan will get Australia back on track and deliver a low inflation, strong growth economy. The answer isn't more expensive and ineffective government programs. We will make it our mission to, first, beat inflation sustainably. Second, repair our housing and energy markets. Revive growth through investment and backing small business. Deliver targeted, timely tax relief. And restore the budget to protect our nation. These 5 goals, these 5 missions, require unleashing the enterprise and energy of the great Australian people. And most important, it means attracting the investment that will drive growth, productivity and prosperity. And that means replacing red tape with freedoms, anxiety with confidence and pessimism with hope. Now, beating inflation sustainably will be always the #1 priority of a Dutton government. This is particularly important while prices are still too high, with the RBA highlighting yesterday that inflation risks and uncertainties are still strong. The Coalition knows the long-term solution to inflation lies in reining in wasteful spending and restoring productivity in our economy. We've identified over $100 billion in spending across this term that was not necessary. We've highlighted key programs, not essential services, that we will wind back in government to reduce pressure on spending. To boost productivity and restore opportunity, we need to tackle the supply challenges that are holding us back. This requires unlocking investment and cutting red tape, but we know there aren't overnight solutions. This is why we've proposed targeting cost of living relief with a halving of the petrol tax in the short term. Our plan is about real relief now while getting inflation sustainably back on track. Now, fixing housing and energy are essential to restore prosperity and opportunity. Australians feel the pain of cost of living most acutely through housing and energy affordability. A collapse in home ownership has profound implications, not just for our aspirational character, but the costs of our retirement system. The challenge requires every lever to be pulled with a focus on 3 in particular: security, serviceability and supply. On security, we'll restore the original promise of super to support first home ownership and work with APRA to get our first home owners a fairer go, making it easier for Australians to secure a home. On serviceability, sustainably beating inflation will put downward pressure on interest rates as we continue to support the first home guarantee. We'll work with APRA to give LMI-backed mortgages fairer pricing and make it easier for Australians to afford to retain their homes or retain their homes by reducing the overly cautious serviceability buffers. On supply, we'll freeze the National Construction Code, restore law and order on our building sites, rebuild our construction trades to bring down the cost of building new supply. We'll cut migration and invest in breaking infrastructure bottlenecks to unlock over 500,000 more homes for Australians. On energy, we need more supply and more energy. This will bring down prices for households and businesses. We must complement the growing share of renewables with baseload dispatchable power. We need to ensure that Australian gas is working for Australians through establishing an East Coast production reservation plan. We'll bring forward more gas through our National Gas Plan, for example, through unlocking the North West Shelf. To decarbonise our grid and secure baseload energy to support manufacturing and data jobs into the 2030s, we'll reform our energy laws to establish a zero-emissions nuclear power industry. Secure and affordable housing and energy are the foundations for living standards and for our economy. They are vital to a prosperous economy that can support aspiration and hope. But affordable energy and housing alone are wasted if they're not used as a foundation for a broader and vibrant private sector. So to strengthen our economy, creating jobs and restoring productivity, we need more investment and a stronger small business sector. This is absolutely core to the Coalition's plan to grow the Australian economy. We face a global race for investment, yet Australia's policy settings are leaving us behind. As I travel the nation, the constant feedback I get from companies is it's too hard to invest in Australia, and we see that in the numbers. Approvals are slow, finance is too hard to find, building is too expensive, government and unions create too many barriers. 2 budgets ago, Labor promised a single front door for investment. 2 budgets later, the door hasn't opened. Today I announced that the Coalition will go further and undertake one of the most significant changes to how government facilitates private sector investment in decades. We'll establish a statutory office within Treasury called Investment Australia. Investment Australia will consolidate and streamline investment facilitation across government under a united function with clear leadership that reports directly to the Treasurer and to Cabinet. It's about fast-tracking investment, not holding it back with bureaucracy. It'll bring the major project facilitation agency into Treasury, consolidating the market and infrastructure functions of Treasury, and bringing elements of foreign investment screening and the takeovers panel under a united function. It'll be backed by a legislative framework and mandate to boost our competitiveness and facilitate investment. Investment Australia will be led by a chair and deputy chair with strong private sector and public administration experience. Its legislative powers will include call-in powers to hold regulators and agencies to account for bureaucratic delays on significant projects for our nation, implementing statutory deadlines for approvals and pathways for escalation to Cabinet. This will drive Australian jobs. This will drive Australian jobs, increase investment into our country and restore our economic potential. Central to Investment Australia's competitiveness mandate will be a mission to make it cheaper and easier to build, to finance, to power our country. Within 100 days, we'll appoint the Investment Australia Chair and establish 3 investment task forces to reduce regulatory costs in key enabling sectors: financial services, construction and resources and energy. These task forces will focus on unlocking productivity and drive growth in these sectors. It's not an inquiry, but rolling structural red tape reduction to reduce costs to consumers and bring down the cost of doing business and the cost of living. Energy is the economy. Make no mistake, energy is the economy, but so too are construction and financial services. The costs in these sectors are embedded in absolutely everything we buy. If they go backwards, our economy goes backwards. If they are strong, the economy is strong. Success means restoring the dream of home ownership, reviving our manufacturing base, bringing down the costs of energy, rebuilding small business. It'll strengthen our mining and resources industries, our world-leading agricultural sector, and our forestry and fisheries. But it also steps up our future industries: data centres, critical minerals, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, clean technology, space and defence industry, and zero-emissions nuclear energy for success. Investment Australia is a structural reform that will provide a lasting message that Australia is open for business. It'll streamline our overlapping and confusing public service agencies while driving a pro-business, pro-investment mindset throughout the public service. It'll implement strong accountability for regulators and bureaucrats and create a pathway for critical stalled projects. The strong, productive, low-inflation economy that comes from more investment will fix the cost of living crisis, restore our economic potential, enable essential services and strengthen the budget to keep all Australians safe in an uncertain world. Today I also announce that a coalition government will pursue a clear ambition to make Australia a financial centre for our region. In recent months, I've outlined policies to drive this agenda, reforming our capital markets to strike the balance between financial stability and affordability of getting into a home, getting insurance and starting a business. Enacting the Productivity Commission's 2018 recommendation to boost competition in our financial services by putting the ACCC on the Council of Financial Regulators. Reforming the Corporations Act to simplify our financial services law and unleash our corporate bond market, and establishing a task force to develop a foreign investment fast track for trusted investors from our key security partners. On Thursday, Peter Dutton announced 4 bills that will be introduced on our first day of Parliament: the Energy Price Reduction Bill, the Lower Immigration and More Homes for Australians Bill, the Keeping Australians Safe Bill, and the Guaranteed Funding for Health, Education and Essential Services Bill. But today I announced that the Coalition will introduce the Securing Australia as a Financial Service Centre Bill within 100 days following the election. The bill will legislate key financial service reforms that Australia has failed to prioritise, ranging from payment system reforms, digital assets regulation, and restoring our financial advice profession. Our financial system is the nervous system of our economy. At best, it supports Australians to fulfil their dreams and realise their aspirations. This will unlock our financial sector and make it easier for Australians to afford a home, plan their retirement and start a business. Now, we can't do any of this without a strong small business sector. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our community and the engine room of our economy. Australian small businesses are being crowded out by a ballooning public service and a rising cost of Labor's red and green tape. For small businesses under Labor, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. To restore this, the Coalition has outlined our plans to make the instant asset write-off permanent at a higher threshold, to simplify mill deductions and save FBT compliance costs, to increase competition and access for small business lending, and to make it easier for small businesses to employ. Michaelia Cash, Susan Lee and I have finalised a comprehensive small business policy package that will be unveiled over the coming weeks. Our announcement on Thursday that a Dutton Coalition government will set a target of 400,000 apprentices and trainees in training across Australia is the next step in this agenda. Our plan is to restore targeted and proven incentive payments for employers to hire and train an apprentice. We'll provide small to medium-sized businesses with $12,000 to support them to put on a new apprentice or trainee in critical skill areas for the first 2 years of their training. Driving the next generation of trades will not just address our housing crisis, but create a new generation of small business owners. Apprentices start work early. They hone their trade and then often go on to create their own businesses, taking on more apprentices of their own. Our policy sends a clear message that you do not have to go to university to fulfil your dreams. We'll elevate the trades and tradies and training as one of our best professions Australians can undertake. We want more Australians to take the leap to be their own boss. to grow their businesses and employ other Australians. A dynamic small business sector and thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem will be the bedrock of our economic strategy and a priority for me as Treasurer. Backing our small businesses is essential to delivering a low inflation, strong economy, because when small businesses grow, Australia grows. So this is why small business is central to our tax policy at this election. Targeted and timely tax relief is also our focus heading into the election. A Dutton coalition government will deliver immediate tax relief. On day one of a new parliament, we'll move to legislate our fuel tax cut. Our cut to the fuel tax will provide immediate relief to families, tradies, countless small businesses. Our permanent and higher instant asset write-off and simpler meal tax deductions I mentioned earlier will support small business recovery and give 98% of Australian businesses a tax cut when they invest in productive assets. 98% of businesses. Our tax to GDP cap is not just a fiscal rule. It's a lower taxes guarantee to the Australian people, ensuring we can manage spending and create room for future tax cuts. We won't cross the Rubicon of taxing unrealised capital gains in Australians' retirement savings, because it is awful policy, forcing small business people and farmers to sell down their businesses. The Coalition is the party of lower, simpler and fairer taxes, and we are delivering at this election. Of course, lower taxes must sit alongside the Liberal and national values of strong budget management and ensuring we protect our nation. The budget deterioration I outlined earlier means that the pathway to balancing all three objectives has to be to strengthen economic growth. We cannot provision for essential services, protect our nation from future shocks and secure the defence of our nation by robbing one generation for another. Any politician who pretends otherwise is not being honest with the Australian people. As an alternative government, we're prepared to be the adults in the room. It's why we've been clear that the starting point for real tax reform is strong economic management. Now, we'll restore good budget management and economic responsibility as well, and it's absolutely key to fighting inflation, delivering essential services, as I said earlier. But it's also essential to prepare us for the unexpected challenges the world forces on us. The Coalition balanced the budget before COVID, and it enabled us to get Australia through the pandemic in a world-leading economic position. We've already made a significant point of difference from the opposition on budget management by opposing $100 billion of unnecessary spending that only puts more pressure on inflation. Billions for transmission lines to nowhere, housing funds that have not built a house, manufacturing funds that are failing to stop the closures in the face of soaring energy prices. We'll restore the budget rules that have underpinned every good budget from Peter Costello until this Labor government. Restoring the tax to GDP cap, ensuring our spending grows at less than GDP growth, committing to restoring the budget to structural balance over the medium term. We'll embed a whole-of-economy productivity target in our fiscal strategy and elevate productivity as the primary growth lever of our economy. By embedding a productivity target in our economic strategy, restoring productivity will be a rolling whole-of-government focus across all portfolios. That'll set us up for growth that will enable us to fund defence and essentials, fix the budget and pursue lower taxes. It's about protecting future generations and ensuring we can fund essential services. Responsible budget management is essential to protect our nation as well. It's essential to beat inflation, and it's essential to provide genuine tax reform that provides lasting relief and reward to families and sets up our economy for success. Labor has failed to manage the budget, and it's failing to respond to the threats and challenges Australians are facing. A Dutton government will restore strong budget management to get Australia back on track. Our plan is a supply-side agenda to grow the economy and ensure we beat inflation sustainably. It's a strong Liberal plan in the tradition of Peter Costello and John Howard, grounded in economic responsibility and driven by enterprise. The Coalition has the toolkit needed to bring down the cost of living and get the economy back on track. But this election is as much about leadership as it is about policy. In Peter Dutton, we have a strong leader and a steady hand. And in the coalition, we have a team grounded in real life. As I said earlier when I was talking about our candidates, it's as true of our sitting members and senators as it is of our candidates. Farmers, business owners, veterans and professionals. As Treasurer, my mission is clear: to rebuild Australian prosperity and restore the hope and aspiration that Labor has left behind. I want an economy where opportunity thrives, where ambition is rewarded, and Australians have the confidence to back themselves again. I bring to this role the experience of starting businesses, working at the highest levels of industry, and growing up on a family farm not far from here. A family farm where you learn how decisions in Canberra shape life around the kitchen table. We're ready to govern and we're ready to deliver a stronger economy with low inflation, cheaper energy, more affordable homes, better healthcare and safer communities. And we will govern with respect for the views, values and aspirations of hard-working everyday Australians. Australians can't afford another 3 years of this Labor government. We're offering a better choice for families, for the economy and for our country. Let's build a stronger, safer and more prosperous future. Let's get Australia back on track.
Thank you, Mr Taylor. You spoke a lot about budget repair and discipline and also restoring the budget, at least to away from deficit in the medium term. For a lot of economists, the one that matters is the forward estimates. Will you pledge, sometime during the election, will the budget under a coalition government be significantly better off over the forward estimates?
Yes.
I'll set the example.
Of course, and I will expand on that, Tom.
Sure.
But it is a one-word answer, and the truth is we need a stronger budget position, and that's why we've opposed over $100 billion of unnecessary Labor spending at this time. That's not an easy thing to do. But we have done it in this term of Parliament without threatening essential services. And that is the approach we will continue to take because it's the right thing. It's the right thing for this country. I mean, at the end of the day, what's happened is Labor has trashed the government budget at the same time as they've been trashing household budgets. I mean, both have just red ink as far as the eye can see. I mean, this is an absolute economic catastrophe. And we've got an economy that is no longer working for middle Australia, for hard-working Australians. You know, only a Labor government could achieve those astoundingly bad outcomes, but that's what they've achieved. That's what we saw in the budget. And it's no surprise to me that Australians said after the last budget, having seen 3 budget flops before, this is the 4th record budget. The Treasurer is very proud that he's done 4 budgets because apparently it's a record. Well, I tell you what is absolutely a record is 4 budget flops. And the last one was the worst of the 4.
All right, well, the question list looks more like an AFL team sheet, so please keep it to 1, beginning with Shane Wright from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age.
I'll be playing out of the back pocket there for you. Mr Taylor, you mentioned the $100 billion in unnecessary spending. Yep. That includes the $45 billion tied up in the HRF, the HAF, and rewiring the nation, all of that which is off budget. What do you plan to do with that $45 billion? How will you treat it? And to follow on from Tom, with his forward estimates, will the 24-25 budget deficit be smaller or larger under yourself?
Yeah, so can I make a couple of comments to this question, Shane, that actually you can say that's all off budget, but there are also interest costs associated with it, which are absolutely on budget, and many of the other initiatives are also on budget. There's a significant portion of it on budget, but either way, it's Australian taxpayers' money, and if it doesn't need to be spent, it shouldn't be. And these are not initiatives at a time when we're facing inflationary pressures that we should be pursuing. Our budget position, as I said earlier, will be stronger than Labor's. We'll put that out before the election, as is customary, in line with past practice. But what you can be absolutely assured of is that our budget position will be stronger than Labor's, and that's why we've made hard decisions. I mean, at the last budget, in the lockup, we made the decision to oppose the corporate, what I think is proving to be corporate welfare in many cases, under their manufacturing programs that frankly are not delivering any manufacturing. Manufacturing's going backwards. We made that decision. We opposed it. There's a significant amount of that is on budget. And that was a tough decision because we want manufacturing to succeed, but we know the way for manufacturing to succeed is get energy costs down, make sure our construction sector is competitive, make sure you get approvals quickly. That's how you do it. You don't make up for all of that with big government subsidies. And at this budget, of course, Labor decided to commit $17 billion. We said, you know what, there's a much more targeted version of relief here for the people who are suffering the most, those hard-working Australians who in many cases have got a house in the suburbs and the regions, many in my electorate, who are having to travel long distances, and they've got no free cash flow. There's no free cash. They're just living absolutely hand-to-mouth under this Labor government, and we decided there was a much more targeted version of relief, which was more economically responsible. And we'll continue to make those decisions. This is, I think, a strong signal we're sending to the Australian people that we're going to be responsible about it, but we also know the pain that they're suffering, and we'll get that balance right.
Next question, Dana Daniel from the Canberra Times.
Dana Daniel from the Canberra Times. Thank you for your speech. You said in a podcast interview that Elon Musk is doing good work. Can you share what you'd like to emulate by way of Trump-style doji cuts to the Australian public service, and specifically which programs you would cut if elected, given Peter Dutton's ruled out cutting frontline services or defence, which are among the 41,000 roles created this term? And can you guarantee that these cuts will result in net savings to the budget and not be outweighed by increased spending on external consultants?
Yeah, okay. There's a number of questions there, so I'll try to break them down a bit. I use Starlink. I live about an hour from here, and I've got to tell you, it has changed the way the internet works for me, my family, and people around me. It is unbelievable. I love innovation that works, that changes the world from the private sector, from entrepreneurs and from enterprise. And anyone, there's lots of farmers and others in my electorate who use that amazing technology, and that's, I think, the best work, the very best work that we've seen from Elon Musk, and I think many Australians in regional Australia will absolutely back me up on that. On the 41,000, that's the growth in the public service under Labor. That's the growth in the public service under Labor. I want to see a strong, effective public service in this country. I've lived around Canberra for much of my life, and I think it's incredibly important that we have a very strong and effective Canberra-based public service. But I've also learnt through the course of my career, a business career, so I'm, compared to most who we're up against on the Labor side, I'm a relative newcomer to politics. But I learned in that career that you don't need to have a bigger team to have a better team. I want to empower the very best public servants in this country to be their absolute best. Take away some of the bureaucracy, and I'm talking about this today, and help them to be part of the mission to make this country a better country. And I think that's what every public servant wants to do. But right now, I don't think that's how the public service is working in many cases. And so we do think we've got to get it back to the size it was before Labor took government, and we've said we'll do that in a way which does not threaten frontline services. It won't be from frontline services, and the focus will be on the Canberra-based jobs, of course. I also think that some movement in and out of the private sector with the public service is what we want to see more of too. I mean, one of the very best people I've worked on in my career was a former public servant, Rod Sims. I worked with him for many years, and he came over from the public sector, went into the private sector. He's gone back to the public sector to obviously went back to the ACCC. We need more of this. We shouldn't be frightened of having a public service that moves between in and out of the public and private sectors. And that mobility, I think, will make us a stronger country, and it's far more likely to achieve the kind of results that I have talked about in this speech today in terms of getting investment moving, because that is the absolute key. If we can get investment moving, we get productivity, we get higher real wages, we get a growing economy, we can pay for all those things we want and we need, and we can have a strong, effective public service.
Next question, Matthew Cranston from The Australian.
Mr. Taylor, this morning, Peter Dutton and Mr. Albanese have both said that they'd be happy to see wages rise even though productivity's going down. So why would you be happy with wages to give someone a wage rise if their productivity's going down? Is it just because that's what's happening to politicians every year? And can I ask also, look, one of the ways you can lift productivity is lightening the tax burden. So the second part of the question is, do you reckon voters in Western Sydney know what bracket creep is? And if you think they do, why do you think they would prefer piecemeal, timely tax bribes, as you call them, over getting rid of bracket creep?
Well, so let me take the first part of your question, Matt, which is about wages. We want higher wages, but most of all, we want higher real wages. I'm going to show you all a chart. I'm an old management consultant. I can't help myself. That side is the employee living cost index since Labor's come to power. That's how much living costs have gone up for the typical working family in Australia, that red bar. That blue bar is how much wages have gone up. We don't want that to go down. We want that one to go down. And that's how you get higher real wages, because then those higher wages buy more goods and services. So that's what we want. Higher real wages. Under Labor, that bar, you can see it, is about half the red bar. Well, that's how much Labor has hurt hard-working Australians. It's that bit there, on the gap between the two. What an absolute disaster for hard-working Australians. We want to see higher real wages in this country. Matt, to your point, key to that is to make sure we've got a productive, competitive economy. And this government has given up the ghost on that. It's given up the ghost on that. I mean, it gave up the ghost on productivity in its first budget. And we've seen it. You know, productivity's fallen just short of 6% in under 3 years. I mean, that is unbelievably rapid collapse. And every economist in this country should be truly appalled at what has happened to our economy under this government. Now, you know, the Reserve Bank governor spoke about this yesterday, and the Reserve Bank governors are always cautious in their language. But the truth of the matter is the Reserve Bank knows that if productivity is like this, sustainably beating the cost of living crisis, getting real wages up and making sure Australians are more prosperous is nigh on impossible. Your second question, Matt, on I'm not sure that anyone's allowed to ask two questions. Is this outside the rules? But I'll answer it anyway.
I'm just pretending to be in control at this stage, aren't I? So go on.
You're going well. You're going well, Tom. You know, the people in Western Sydney know what bracket creep is. Oh, I don't know. Some do, some don't. Depends who you ask. But I tell you what they do know. I tell you, they know that high inflation has eroded their standard of living, that they have gone backwards under Labor, and that the price of everything has gone up, and it's gone up faster than their incomes. And that is what you saw on that chart I just showed you then.
Just after one of those wonderful one-word answers, the 37% tax bracket, is it possible to get rid of that in the next term, or is that too expensive?
Well, we obviously had a go at that, and Labor lied to the Australian people before the last election and went in a different direction. Now, they spent all the money, because that's what Labor does. They always spend all the money. That's the one thing you can be sure of with them. You can have great confidence they'll spend all the money. And the result of that is that the budget is trash. So we've got to rebuild. We've got to rebuild the reservoirs if we're going to get further personal income tax cuts.
Phil Curry from the AFR.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Mr Taylor. Just on tax, you mentioned in your speech, as Senator Jane Hume has also said, that you've set a target of getting the budget back into structural surplus within the medium term, which is sort of 10 years. Will we have to wait that long under a coalition government before you do meaningful tax reform, as you said in your speech? Or could you envisage doing it earlier? And just related to that, will you be releasing costings on all your promises before the election?
Well, Phil, I'm not going to give you my 2029 budget today.
Sure.
I think that's a bit preemptive. But no, look, to be frank with you, we've just got to get the settings right now. This is the key. I mean, Labor has absolutely trashed the budget. It's diabolical. I mean, how can you have iron ore prices that are still high, that have stayed high, huge commodity windfalls, huge windfalls on personal income taxes, which everyone's feeling, and you've still got red ink as far as the eye can see? They have trashed the budget. So we've got to get back to those basic fiscal rules that I talked about in my speech, growing the economy faster than spending. There's two parts to that. Grow the economy more, and you know that productivity is the absolute key to that. And investment is the key to that. That's why I'm talking about what I am today, and making sure, no, it's not slash and burn, it's making sure you contain the growth in spending. And then over time, you see the budget position improve, and that's what we will do in government. So it's very clear. What's so astonishing about it is that Labor threw those rules away in their first budget. And so it's no surprise then that the Treasurer has completely lost control of discipline in Cabinet. And that was very clear in this budget. There's no discipline left. Because if you don't have basic rules, your ministerial colleagues are going to come in and say, well, you know, I want to spend on this and that and everything else, and they do. And that's exactly what's happened.
And on costings, will we see your costings?
Yeah, it's costing before the election. Yeah.
Katina Curtis from the West Australian.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. I was really struck by something you said near the start of your speech. You came back to it at the end. You said, our team reflects the people they seek to represent. Less than a third of your candidates are women. It's a quarter in WA. What does that say to the women voters in Australia?
Well, that's not right. If you look across both houses of Parliament, I think the right number is 47%. So,
what about in WA?
I can't speak to every state, but I'd say across Australia, and they are an amazing group of candidates. They are the most amazing group of candidates I have seen in my time in politics. I mean, I thought the 2013 crop was pretty good. I was lucky enough to be one of them. But I tell you that the people we have out fighting across this country for better government, for making sure that we don't have another 3 years of Labor, making sure that we do have a vision for beating inflation, for boosting growth, for backing business, for making sure we fix our housing supply, our energy supply in this country. They are the most incredible group of people. And the truth is, unlike our opponents, most of them are coming from outside of politics. But I think we need that. We need a balance, and I'm a great believer that we should have that balance, and I think we've got an amazing balance on so many different dimensions.
Andrew Probyn from the Nine Network.
Mr Taylor, I think Katina will write that as a non-answer. Can I ask you about your gas plan? James Patterson on the weekend was saying that you deliver gas $10 a gigajoule to households. Mm-hmm. Peter Dutton seems to be thinking it's $10 a gigajoule wholesale. First of all, which is it? But then let's go through your maths. You've got to get gas from the wellhead, it's $7 to $9, say. To deliver it, it's anywhere between $2.50 to $3.50 a gigajoule. You can see here it doesn't stack up. Mm-hmm. So where are your savings? And secondly, because everyone else has done it, Tom, you said you love Starlink.
I can treat this as an optional question, the second one.
Well, do with it as you will.
Yes.
You say you love Starlink. Are you going to flog off the NBN?
The answer to your second question is no, so that's simple. I'll give the one-word answer. On gas, so currently the price of gas we're seeing, and it moves every day, of course, is around $14 or a little higher. Sneak preview on the modelling, you'll see that we can get it down to below 10. So 14 down to below 10 is a very substantial
Household
reduction.
or
Well,
wholesale?
everyone pays that. So industry, households, that's all built into everybody's prices, Andrew, wherever you are.
No, $10. Is it households?
You don't
or,
get 5 questions.
Yeah,
I thought I got the chance
like
to answer the
either.
first one.
Household or wholesale?
Well, you're getting a $4 reduction for everybody. For everybody, Andrew. That's how the market works. And so right now, over 14, down to below 10, and the way we do this is incredibly important. If you put extra supply into the network, you drive down prices. Now, I don't want to... well, the economics of this is absolutely essential to understand. More supply drives down price. It's always been true. And we have an opportunity in this country, as one of the biggest gas exporters in the world, between us and the US and Qatar, is to make sure that Australian gas is not just working for international customers, but is working for Australians. And that means pumping more gas into our network. In the short term, we think that gap is between 50 and 100 petajoules in a market of just over 500. And that's a very substantial domestic market. Okay. That's a very substantial reduction in price that you can achieve as a result of that increased supply. So it's not complicated. The important point about this is that we need gas for so many things we do. So, because gas drives the price of electricity for much of the time, particularly in the evenings. We see gas is the price setter. Gas is crucial to the food we've all just eaten here today, because the fertiliser that makes that food possible is made from natural gas. Gas is the key input into plastics, aluminium, into steel. It is used in everything. And this is why Peter says that energy is the economy, and if we can get the price of gas down, we can help to bring the price of things down right across our economy.
Compliments to the chef on the beef fillet as well. The next question comes from...
Very good fertiliser.
Comes from Laura Tingle from the ABC.
Mr Taylor, I also have a question on gas. Will your plan only apply to future offshore projects, or, as Mr Dutton suggested in his speech, on current projects, which therefore is a market change of rules? And if that's the case, how do you possibly improve prices by the end of the year and supply?
No, it's on, Laura, to your question. The focus here is on getting more gas supply in from current production.
And that's a change of
current production. So it's a production reservation program, and that means we can move 50 to 100 petajoules, and it'll differ from year to year, so that number won't be the same number each year, into the Australian gas network to drive down the price, and we're very confident that we can get that price down to below $10 a gigajoule with the significant
changing the
reduction.
Spot market rules.
Yeah, so that's. I think I've answered the question. And, as I say, this is incredibly important. This is the one big lever we have in the short term to bring down the cost of energy in this country and the cost of everything that uses energy. This is the key. It's not just energy itself, and it's why Andrew's question was a good one, asking about all the flow on to industry and to households. It flows on to everything that uses energy. And it's a very, very powerful lever, and it gives us space then over the medium to longer term to put in place zero emissions nuclear generators.
Thank you.
Ben Westcott from Bloomberg.
Hello, Mr Taylor, thank you so much for your speech today. I want to take you back to comments made by a starry-eyed young shadow treasurer a year ago in this same place, in which you said in reaction to a question about your nuclear policy that you don't want to commit to subsidies that aren't necessary. You want to make sure it's commercially viable. You think that's a key point. Yep. And if it's commercially viable, it's not going to have to be subsidised. That's how the commercial world works. Now, obviously, 6 months later, you announced, or your party announced a $331 billion plan for nuclear power. But then, in addition, recently you've said that there will be a significant private sector investment in that nuclear plan as well. You said that at a press conference quite recently. how do you marry up all those different points? How much of the money in the nuclear plan will be government money? How much will be private money? And who will own the power plants at the end?
I think you're not quite saying what I said on that last point. It's very clear that our energy system currently gets investment from state governments, from the private sector, as well as some from the Commonwealth government now. So that's the only point I made. It wasn't relating to the nuclear generators. We've made clear that they will be Commonwealth government investment. So that's your second question. Your first question, I was a bit unclear.
How do you? So I suppose who's going to own the government's going to own them at the end?
Yeah, no, the government will own the generators.
And the cost will be $331 billion.
Not of the generators. No, the 7 generators costing below $20 billion each. So that's the cost of building the generators. Now, the overall system cost is what you were referring to, and that includes lots of other generation and transmission and distribution, and that'll be 44% lower than Labor's cost. And that ultimately is what is the key for customers, because if it's 44% lower cost across the total system, then in a competitive market, it'll be 44% lower cost for consumers, and we'll make sure it's a competitive market. We have to. These are not subsidies. Those generators will have to earn a return on investment. And that's the point I have made at all times, and that's how they were independently modelled. This is all based on independent modelling. As a return on investment, a return to taxpayers, there's no subsidies involved.
In terms of the cost difference for a consumer, Labor's plan is to have a lot more electricity or power in the system. So wouldn't the 44% less not be a per consumer saving per se?
Well, we think their plan, and the independent modelling says their plan is an overbuild. And we've had an overbuild in our energy systems in the past. We actually, before I came into politics, I saw the overbuild in the Queensland system, for instance, in terms of poles and wires. And what happens is when you overbuild, consumers pay for it. The price goes up. That's what happens in energy systems if you overbuild. So to say that that's not comparable, it is absolutely comparable. This is Labor's plan. And frankly, it's a plan that every Australian is going to have to pay more for. There is an alternative plan. It's 44% lower cost.
Next question from Sarah Basford-Canales from The Guardian.
Thank you, Mr Taylor. In Peter Dutton's budget reply last week, he said he'd be reversing those 41,000 additional jobs in the public service that have come in since the Albanese government took power. He said that it would save the budget $7 billion once in place. Presumably that's come from some sort of modelling or costing. Why aren't you being honest with the Australian public about where those jobs will come from, especially if you've got a dollar figure attached to it already? And just on a quick second point that is related, I promise, you've previously said these jobs would be cut by attrition. Do you expect that to be done by the end of the year, or will redundancies be on the table?
Well, we've been very clear about 3 things throughout. One is that the focus will be on attrition. Obviously, the focus, we've said time and time again, is Canberra-based public servant jobs in non-frontline services. That's the focus. There's not been any ambiguity about that. In terms of your earlier question, the costings we'll put out, as I said to some of those earlier questions that others asked, the costings will come out before the election, and people will be able to peruse those and evaluate them, and I'm sure you will.
Just to confirm, though, those costings have actually been done already?
Look, the costings will come out before the election. I'm not going to go through the sausage-making process that is the reality of doing these things, other than to say that the team's been working hard for a long time, and you'll see the costings in good time, and you'll be able to assess them and evaluate them.
And just quickly on the redundancies question as well, will there be redundancies, or is it?
I think, as I said, the focus is on natural attrition. That will be the emphasis. Well, that's the emphasis we'll make, is on natural attrition. The important point about this is the public service has got so big under Labor that the attrition numbers are high now. I mean, you naturally have higher attrition if you've got more people, because people leave to go and do other things. And it's not a bad thing that a certain proportion of public servants each year go off to the private sector and do other things, and then hopefully come back with some of the experience they've learned from the private sector. We want to see that. I mean, that's a really good thing for this nation. I think by having a capital city that's detached from some of the commercial centres as we have here in Australia. There's probably less of that than I think would be healthy. It'd be good to see more of it, and that's why the head and deputy head of Investment Australia will be looking to bring in some private sector expertise into that team from day one.
You won't be changing the capital though?
No plan for that.
Okay. Just
I'm not usually into rule in, rule out, but I can probably rule that one out.
Good to know. Jacob Steinman from AAP.
Mr. Taylor, thank you for your speech. Jacob Steinman from AAP.
Yep.
The early stages of this election campaign have shaped as a contest between $10 a week in tax cuts and cheaper fuel for a year, at least on the tax front. What's your plan for genuine tax reform to get productivity and living standards moving again as business groups and other quarters of the economy have?
Yeah. No, look, great question. I think I've talked about this quite a lot during the speech. I mean, we obviously need to get investment moving in this country if we're going to see that situation, that disastrous situation of Australians going backwards where prices are going up faster than their incomes. If it's going to be reversed, we need to see investment, and that's why business tax has been such a strong focus for us. Instant asset write-off, getting small business investing. When a small business invests, it's not just investing in its business, it's investing in the community it's part of, it's investing in its employees, current and future, and it's investing in the nation. And we want to see more of that, and that is a very strong focus for us. In terms of the tax relief you just talked about, we think it should be absolutely targeted, it should be immediate, and that's why we've said a halving of the fuel tax is the right way to go. Labor, 70 cents a day starting in 15 months' time, and it's permanent, and they call it cost of living relief. The only conclusion I could draw from that policy, or one conclusion I could draw from that policy, is that the cost of living crisis is going to be permanent under Labor. I just think it was, I don't understand the logic of it. It makes no sense. And I think there is a better way. In terms of longer-term reform that you're talking about, the key to this is to continually drive improvement in the budget so you can meet that tax to GDP cap and you can ensure that the dividends from strong, effective, well-run government, some of those dividends go back to Australians in lower taxes over time, and those fiscal rules are the absolute key. They've worked in the past for Liberal national governments, and they'll work again.
So can we expect this election any more announcements on long-term?
I'm not going to give you the schedule of announcements over the next few weeks. I'll leave that to my leader.
Jason Koutsoukas from the Saturday paper.
Mr Taylor, thanks for your speech. On March 14, the Financial Review quoted one of your parliamentary colleagues saying that you and Mr Dutton were engaged in a tit-for-tat war, and another colleague saying that you and Mr Dutton were firing arrows at each other, citing issues like insurance divestiture and winding back work from home rights for public servants. So what is your working relationship with Mr Dutton, and can Australians believe that you really do trust each other?
Yeah, interesting. So absolutely outstanding. I mean, great to have my colleagues here today, because I think every one of them, if you have a private chat with them, will confirm that Peter and I have an outstanding relationship. I have worked with him since I was the Law Enforcement and Cyber Minister back many years ago, and we've had an absolutely outstanding working relationship ever since then. I've worked with him closely in that role. I was his Assistant Minister. I've worked with him closely as a fellow member of the Morrison Cabinet, and I've obviously worked with him very closely over the last 3 years as the Shadow Treasurer, and I'm very proud to call him a great colleague and a great friend, because he is the strong, steady hand that Australia needs right now. I am absolutely convinced of it. I took that view when we went into opposition, that Peter was the right person to lead our party, the right person to lead the nation, at a time that I knew was going to be difficult, and I felt that Labor would not be able to manage the challenges thrown at this country over the last 3 years. They haven't, they've failed, and that strong, steady hand in Peter Dutton, he has played such an incredible role as an opposition leader. He's led the agenda time and time and time again in this country when the weak and ineffective Prime Minister and Treasurer haven't been able to lead the agenda. And I think that has shown in spades for an opposition in first term to be in the position that we've got ourselves into is because of his incredible leadership the united team behind him, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Why do you think you...
We're very short. I just want to get through 2 more people if I can. Sorry, Jason.
Spearsy's keen to ask 7 questions.
David Spears from the ABC.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mr Taylor, for your address today. I want to come back to gas as well.
Yeah.
It's nearly a week since the budget reply announcement. We still haven't seen the modelling, obviously, or even a press release on this one, hence the questions. You said just now today that everybody will save $4 a gigajoule. Can I just ask how? Will you legislate this $10 cap or price, or will you legislate some sort of penalty, which the industry reckons would be a tax? How do you do this?
Through the market. I know this is a mysterious concept, but when you put supply into the market, Spearsy, it drives down price. And what we've seen from the work we've done is the current price around $14. We can get it down to below 10 by putting that extra supply in the market. And when the price in the market goes down by $4 or so, then the whole market enjoys that lower price.
Is it guaranteed?
That's what the modelling is telling us, Spearsy, and that's the 50 to 100 petajoules, which is the gap in the market we perceive now. That can change, as I say, but that's where it is now. And then that's the outcome. And you know, that happens to be in line with what we think can sustain a successful and profitable commercial gas industry in this country.
Final question from David Crowe, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you for your speech, Mr Taylor, and I will make it quick. One of John Howard's old sayings was, you can't fatten the pig on market day. Some of your answers to the questions today have been to tell the journalists, wait and see, there'll be policy later on. Are you leaving it too late to reveal what you've got on economic reform and the future of the country when there's only a few more weeks to go to polling day?
Now, we don't want to leave you bored over the last 4 weeks of the campaign.
Not about us, it's about voters.
And so we've kept a little bit in the bag that we will be announcing in the next 4 weeks, and we've got to do that. I mean, that's how election campaigns work. And you'd be the first to complain if we went for 3 weeks without announcing. We'd already announced all our policy.
No,
but we've announced. Can I say just
about your economic plan now, if there was more of it on the table?
Well, I've laid out today, I think, a profoundly different economic plan to the one we've seen from Labor. I've laid out today a profoundly different pathway for this country than the one we've seen from Labor. It's enterprise-driven, it's initiative-driven, it's incentive-driven, and it's driven most of all by making sure that we have a pathway not just to solve the short-term problem of restoring our standard of living, beating the cost of living crisis, but the longer-term hope that Australians want and need when it comes to buying and owning a home, starting and building a business, building their career over time. And that is part of what it is to be Australian, those things. That is part of what it is to be Australian. I tell you, when I get around the country, I see hope fading. I see people saying there's not light at the end of the tunnel anymore, and what we are laying out is a pathway which is private, unashamedly, it's private sector driven, it's enterprise driven. I don't resolve from that for 1 sec, because that's where I come from. I know the key to a strong economy, to a strong Australia, is to have a strong private sector investing in the future of this country. That's what I want to do as Treasurer. That's why I want to be Treasurer, because I want to see that happening, because I know the opportunities that can flow from it. I know the essential services we can provide from that. I know that that's how we protect our nation in an uncertain time. I know that's how we deliver the rising real wages that we must see. And that's what I have laid out today. And you'll see more of it, but I think there is a big choice coming up, and the choice is whether people want to see another 3 years like the last 3 years, or the alternative that we've been laying out over recent weeks and will continue to lay out over the coming weeks.
Final easy one from me. You spoke about the Costello traditions. Peter Costello, before every election he contested, he was here at the Press Club for a Treasury debate. Would you like to continue that tradition?
Well, this is my 4th time at the Press Club in this term of Parliament, and I am sad to say, Tom, this will be my last. I will be debating the Treasurer on multiple occasions, and I have proposed where and when. Indeed, I've invited him to debate me around 25 times in the Parliament. after question time, and he's walked out every single time. He's walked out every single time. So I'm relishing the opportunity of taking on this Treasurer that has overseen the trashing of our standard of living, of our economy, of our pathway to hope and aspiration, because, frankly, he needs to be held to account for those failures.
All right, well, if you need a venue, you know where to find us, but otherwise I'll present you with this club membership so you can get back in. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Angus Taylor. Thanks, mate.